What would happen if we ate like the Romans? The Roman Empire was known for its military might, expansive roads and aqueducts, and of course, its cuisine. While there are many aspects of Roman life that we would love to forget, their food is not one of them. In fact, it's quite delicious and varied. But this also means that it's very different from what we eat today. And chances are, if we tried to replicate a traditional Roman diet, we would probably get pretty sick. Let's take a look at some weird Roman foods that would make us puke. Laurel buds. Laurel buds were considered a delicacy in ancient Rome, often used to garnish dishes and add flavor. Today, we mainly associate laurel with the laurel wreath, a symbol of victory and achievement in ancient Rome. It was highly prized as a spice and was used to add flavor to both meat and fish dishes. The Romans even had special pots called laurelia, used specifically for boiling laurel buds. However, modern science has found that laurel buds contain a compound called camphor, which can cause nausea and vomiting if consumed in large quantities. So if we tried to eat like the Romans by adding liberal amounts of laurel to our meals, we would likely end up spending more time on the toilet than we would like. Fermented fish sauce. Fish sauce is still popular in many parts of Asia today, but it wasn't invented in China or Thailand. No, fish sauce actually originated in ancient Rome. This pungent, salty liquid made by fermenting fish and salt was used to season many Roman dishes. The Romans were so fond of fish sauce that they even exported it to other parts of the empire, including Britain. It was particularly popular during the late Roman Empire when fresh fish was harder to come by. However, fish sauce is a bit of an acquired taste. It's extremely pungent and salty and can be quite fishy. In fact, many people who try fish sauce for the first time are immediately put off by the smell and taste. If we tried to incorporate fish sauce into our modern diets, we would likely find ourselves running to the bathroom for another reason. Wild boar. Wild boars are still found in many parts of Europe today, but they're much smaller than their Roman counterparts. That is, because wild boars were selectively bred by humans over the centuries to become larger and more muscular. As a result, Roman wild boars could weigh up to 600 pounds, making them almost twice the size of modern wild boars. These massive animals were often hunted by Roman soldiers and citizens alike, and they were considered a delicacy. However, if we tried to hunt and eat wild boars today, we would likely find ourselves in trouble. Not only are they much larger than modern wild boars, but they're also much more aggressive. If we managed to bring one down, we would have to deal with the tusks. A full-grown wild boar's tusks can be over a foot long, making them deadly weapons. If we tried to eat like the Romans and hunt wild boar, we would likely end up with a few tusk holes in our bodies. Ashen meat. The Romans were known for their love of meat, and they ate a wide variety of animals, including some that we wouldn't think of as food today. One of the most popular meats in ancient Rome was ashen, or donkey meat. Donkeys were seen as a symbol of hard work and endurance, and their meat was considered to be very tough and lean. While we may find the idea of eating donkeys strange today, it was a common dish in ancient Rome. It was usually prepared by braising the meat for hours, until it was tender enough to eat. If we tried to eat like the Romans and incorporate ash into our diets, we would likely face another challenge. Donkeys are much smaller than horses, so their meat isn't nearly as large or plentiful. Plus, most of us probably couldn't stomach the thought of eating a working animal. Even if we could get past the ethical concerns, we would likely find ourselves retching at the sight of donkey meat. Mandrake. Mandrake is a small plant with a long taproot. It's found in the wild in many parts of the world, but it's also been cultivated for centuries. That's because mandrake has a unique and somewhat unpleasant taste that can be used to add flavor to dishes. In ancient Rome, mandrake was often used to flavor soups and stews, as well as to make a type of sausage. However, mandrake is not only bitter and unpleasant tasting, but it's also toxic. If we tried to eat like the Romans and incorporated mandrake into our diets, we would likely end up with a bad case of food poisoning. The toxins in mandrake can cause vomiting and diarrhea, and in large doses, it can even be fatal. This is why mandrake is no longer used in cooking today. We simply don't need the risk. Roasted serpents. Snakes aren't on the menu at most restaurants today, but in ancient Rome, they were a popular dish. Roasted serpents were said to be a delicacy, and wealthy Romans would often serve them up at banquets. The most popular type of snake to eat was the viper, and it was usually roasted over an open fire until it was crispy and dry. If we tried to eat like the Romans and ordered a plate of roasted serpents, we would likely end up with more than we bargained for. First of all, snakes aren't exactly easy to come by in most parts of the world today. And even if we could find some, we would have to deal with the venom. Most venomous snakes can kill a human with just a few bites. So if we tried to eat a roasted serpent, we would have to be very careful. Even if we managed to avoid being bitten, we would still have to deal with the taste. Snakes have a very distinct flavor that not everyone enjoys. It's often described as being fishy or metallic. And let's be honest, most of us probably couldn't stomach the thought of eating a snake. Monkey brains. Monkey brains may sound like a dish best left to the Romans, but in some parts of the world, they're still eaten today. In ancient Rome, monkey brains were considered a delicacy, and they were often served up at feasts and banquets. The most popular way to prepare monkey brains was to remove them from the skull and then fry them in olive oil. If we tried to eat like the Romans and order a dish of monkey brains, we would likely face a few challenges. First of all, monkeys are not typically eaten in most parts of the world today, and even if we could find some, we would have to deal with the ethics of eating primates. Monkeys are highly intelligent animals, and many people believe that they should not be eaten. We would also have to deal with the taste. Monkey brain has a very distinctive flavor that not everyone enjoys. It's often described as being gamey or metallic, and let's be honest, most of us probably couldn't stomach the thought of eating monkey brains. Pomegranates. Pomegranates are still enjoyed today by millions around the world. They're high in antioxidants and are said to have a number of health benefits. In ancient Rome, pomegranates were also popular, and they were often used to add flavor to dishes. They were also believed to have magical powers. Some people even believed that pomegranates could help them live forever. If we tried to eat like the Romans and incorporated pomegranates into our diets, we would likely find ourselves with a few stomach cramping. Pomegranates are known to cause stomach cramping and diarrhea in some people. They also have a laxative effect, so eating too many pomegranates could lead to some unwanted side effects. Peacock tongues? Peacocks are known for their beautiful feathers and their loud calls, but did you know that they also have tongues? Well, if you didn't, don't worry because you probably don't want to know. Peacock tongues are considered a delicacy in some parts of the world, and they're often served up as a rare and exotic dish. Peacock tongues have a unique flavor that some people describe as being smoky or gamey. However, this dish is not for everyone, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart. If we tried to eat like the Romans and incorporated peacock tongues into our diets, we would likely find ourselves in trouble. Not only is it an exotic and unusual dish, but it's also very expensive. Peacocks are not cheap birds, and their tongues are even more costly. Which of these Roman foods would you try, and which ones would you stay away from? Let us know in the comments below. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to stay tuned for more fun and interesting content. Thanks for watching.